The pre-sale for the Marvels has started and the numbers are trickling in and it doesn't look good. In fact, it looks like it's going to be an enormous drop, not only from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but certainly from the Captain Marvel movie that preceded it. And I definitely want to give a tip of the cap to Matt McGloin over at Cosmic Book News for doing all the math for me, making this easy, also pointing me to the Reddit post where all this stuff is happening. And I've got Feige, Karen, coming in here hot after I talk about the information that we do have, making all the excuses in the world. And this should be a little bit of fun. Let's just put it. Following tickets going on sale Tuesday, it's claimed that the Marvel's ticket pre-sales are in the gutter and are less than a third of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 opened with $118.4 million weekend. If the Marvel's ticket sales are less than a third of that, that could mean the Marvel's box office opens with $39 million or less. The potential $39 million box office opening for the Marvels would be a complete disaster for Kevin Feige, as the first Captain Marvel opened to a whopping $153.4 million back in 2019. So the sequel would be a decrease of nearly 75%. Yeah, I think a 75% decrease from sales from the first Captain Marvel movie would be considered a disaster. Considering this is tying into so much stuff, it's literally a direct sequel to Captain Marvel. It's a direct sequel to Miss Marvel, the show on Disney Plus, as well as a loose sequel to WandaVision, which obviously had Monica Rambeau in it, and it's filling in and completing that story arc as well. So there's a lot of things leading into this, and it turns out when everything is homework, not everybody wants to take the test, and not everyone's excited for this. This information is coming out of Box Office Theory, and there's like a big Reddit post on this one. I love Karen Feige showing up to let everybody know, well, what you see happening is not actually really happening. This person was Magic Carp Catcher. I am a mod on the Reddit Box Office too. I knew a post like this would show up here eventually, so I want to clear some things up and provide additional context. Firstly, as you must know, it hasn't even been a day since pre-sales started. Secondly, first day pre-sales are an indicator for the opening weekend projection, but just because these pre-sales are slow doesn't mean the movie is going to flop. That's why trades use several weeks worth of pre-sale data to make the opening weekend projections. And you are correct, Karen Feige. Yes, this is only a couple of days of data, but this certainly indicates that there's not a lot of enthusiasm for the Marvels. Not a lot of people are lining up to go watch it in IMAX, get the best seats at their theater for opening night or even opening weekend. People are like, well, I watched Captain Marvel. That thing was an absolute bait and switch, had nothing to do with Endgame. Certainly wasn't must watch to actually understand what happened in Endgame. In fact, Captain Marvel played almost a nothing role in that movie whatsoever. I don't think I want to fall for this again. Oh, Miss Marvel's in it. I didn't watch that show either because I wasn't interested in another second-rate hero that no one cares about. Oh, wow, they put Monica Rambeau, the lady that should be Captain Marvel, if you weren't going to use Marvel. Just another strike against Kevin Feige and the brain trust at Marvel Studios. Karen Feige then says, thirdly, some movies start hot off the gate when tickets go on sale, while others rely on word of mouth and walk-in business. Box Office Theory and the Reddit box office had a meltdown when Guardians of the Galaxy 3 pre-sales were allegedly a disaster, and then it turned out to be fine with close to $120 million opening because of great word of mouth and walk-ins. Well, in fact, that $120 million opening was substantially less than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and it certainly had been tarnished. The MCU itself had been tarnished by so many bad movies that had come out before that. I think we had Thor, Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and a few other absolute duds there. And I think people lost interest in the MCU, and they decided not to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 opening weekend, but it turned out it actually was a good movie, and the good word of mouth actually got people into the theater, because it actually had a real director associated with it. His name was James Gunn. The Marvels doesn't have a headline like A-list star like a Chris Pratt. They don't even really have a Zoe Saldana or a Dave Bautista in the cast or anything like that, and they don't have a real director. You got Nita DaCosta or whatever her name is, whose film credits are very lackluster when you compare them to James Gunn, who's actually delivered several very good superhero movies. So I think it's a bad comparison, but I don't blame you for trying that one. Good job. Finally, Karen Feige says, on the other side of the spectrum, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour film had recording-breaking pre-sales. Karen said that, not me. You might have seen the headlines. That resulted in the trades almost guaranteeing a $100 million opening weekend domestically and even going as high as $125 million. However, based on ticket sales from this week's Box Office Theory is now saying that despite the huge pre-sales, it might not even open to $100 million. So yeah, I would not start panicking just yet. Yet another very bad comparison, Karen Feige. The Taylor Swift concert film is a completely different animal than a superhero action flick in the MCU. Like, they're not even apples and oranges. They're just completely different things. Not to mention on top of that, that Taylor Swift already actually made her money on the Eras Tour itself. This is just like another cherry on top. Disney are actually risking like $450 million of real money just to get the Marvels out there. Now that we know that the budget is like $300 million, let's be generous and nice to them and say the marketing is only going to be $150 million. That means they have to make like $900 million worldwide just to break even. Not even an apples and oranges comparison when it comes to the Taylor Swift Eras Tour film. And from what I've seen, it is certainly going to go over $100 million, and they're thinking that it might do $400 million worldwide by the time it's over. Well, that's a whole lot less than $900 million that Disney needs to make. Yeah, but she already sold the tour. She already made all her money. She doesn't need to make a dime off of all these movies. Sure, they spent money on production and marketing or whatever, but it's already being taken out of the coffers of the profits that they already made. It's already well into the green. It's one of the most successful tours of all time. And Taylor Swift isn't the MCU. She's not associated with a billion-dollar movie franchise like the Marvels is. It's such a terrible comparison, such a Karen Feige thing to do, but thank you very much. There was another Redditor that posted in that was a little bit more realistic, although I thought probably coping a little bit too hard on this one. This is what Reality314 said. To be fair, I don't think the Marvels was ever going to make more than a Guardians movie. Guardians of the Galaxy is a household name, and even people who aren't into the MCU that much know and or like them. Captain Marvel's popular, but not to that level. I also don't believe that Captain Marvel 2 was ever going to reach any of the box office success of a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 because people didn't hate the characters. People actually like Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana and Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel, Dave Bautista. They actually like that ensemble cast. And nobody likes Brie Larson for the most part. Iman Vellani seems like a really nice person, not a star. Nobody knows who Tiyana is, so the box office draw itself is Captain Marvel, who is not popular. They can't even keep that comic book going. And it's about to flop again in comic books, and it's going to flop in movies. And in Marvel's mind, and Kevin Feige's mind, Captain Marvel is a bigger brand than Guardians of the Galaxy, certainly, but it ain't going to play out that way. Marvel fatigue in the past, I probably would have brushed people off who said Marvel fatigue is real, or that people are tired of superhero movies. And while I still don't entirely agree, I think there is some truth to it post-Endgame. Marvel's been a rocky slate, and especially after Secret Invasion, I feel like a lot of people have seriously begun to question the MCU's quality. As well they should have, because it absolutely sucks right now. And I think Marvel fatigue is real. It's not because they're tired of superhero movies or they're tired of the characters. I think they're tired of all the stupid MCU humor. Every hero has to be a female now, and now we're getting into the Marvel Now era of Marvel comic storytelling, which people rejected in comic books too. So yeah, it's pretty much dying, and we're all watching it. The movie has an abnormally large amount of haters, and we all know why. Go to literally any YouTube video Marvel puts out on the Marvels, and the like to dislike ratio is higher than any other movie or Disney Plus show, with the exception of the first Captain Marvel movie. There's a section of fans and people in general that just legitimately want to see this movie fail. And I agree that the dislike of Brie Larson as Captain Marvel has gone further than just hardcore MCU fans. I think general normie audiences also recognize that Brie Larson is not a very good Carol Danvers, not a very good Captain Marvel, pretty terrible superhero, and not somebody they ever probably should have hired and brought into the universe. She was terrible when she was doing PR for the first movie and basically turned off anybody with two functioning brain cells. Who's like, man, I do not like this lady. Why is she anywhere on the movie? And why are Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios promoting this lady? And I'm not surprised there's a high dislike ratio on anything Marvel puts out that's the Marvels related. It's bound to happen when you hire somebody that no one likes. The movie isn't marketed as must-see event. And to be fair, I don't think this was meant to be. From what we've seen from the trailers and leaks, it seems like this movie is much more self-contained and just a fun action movie. There's nothing wrong with that, but it might translate to less box office. Multiverse of Madness was marketed as an event, and that's partly why it did so well financially. I think Multiverse of Madness did so well financially, at least opening up, because people like Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, and not everyone had realized that the MCU as we know it had already died at the end of Endgame. And it feels like an absolute aberration, but I do not agree with this at all, that it's not supposed to be must-see. This thing has a goddamn $300 million budget. They need it to make like $1 billion, and they expected it to make $1 billion, especially after the first Captain Marvel movie. I guess they didn't believe it when people were like, yeah, you kind of fooled us into watching this movie, and it turns out I didn't need to for Endgame, so maybe I'll skip the next one. But this is not supposed to be self-contained. Like I said, it's a direct sequel to Captain Marvel. It's a direct sequel to Miss Marvel, the TV show, and a sequel to WandaVision. It's not self-contained whatsoever. Like, you have to do homework just to go in and see the movie and understand it. Now, I will admit that making Freaky Friday into a $300 million action flick was a really stupid idea, but that was on Marvel. They thought that was going to translate into $1 billion, and they're about to find the hard way that that is not true. But they wanted it to be must-see, but they might be realizing right now that it's not. Finally, I think the actor strike actually had a pretty big impact on this movie. More than any other MCU project in recent years, this one would have benefited greatly from the promotion of its actors. The whole selling point of the film is the chemistry between Brie, Tiana, and Iman. Without having them sell the movie, the marketing hasn't been as good as it could have been. From all the reports that I've seen behind the scenes, Brie and Tiana don't like each other. In fact, that was a big sticking point and one of the reasons that the director never wants to do a Marvel movie again, because Brie's ego was so big. She didn't want to share like co-starring credit with the other two. And it sounds like there was a major league beef between the actors, and it's probably a good thing they weren't out there. Remember when they were doing like all the Avengers press junkets and whatever, and you could see people reacting to Brie Larson talk, and you could tell that all the other cast members hated her guts and they didn't like her? I think that's what we would have gotten with these people talking. So I don't think Brie Larson out there promoting this movie would have helped it. I think it would have hurt it in the long run. And you probably would have realized that all the rumors behind the scenes and the reasons that the director didn't enjoy her time directing this movie were probably all true, that those two absolutely do not like each other, and it would have been a marketing disaster. So it's probably a good thing that they didn't do that. I definitely disagree with that one. So I don't know. I thought the Cope stuff on Reddit was pretty funny. I really enjoyed Karen Feige showing up and setting us all straight and letting us know you can't just base it off these numbers just because there's no enthusiasm for the movie and nothing indicates it's going to come anywhere near being a success doesn't mean it can't be a success or something like this. Now, a big part of that is the budget, which is absolutely insane. I talked about this in a previous video when they finally came out with the enormous budget, like $300 million. My goodness, did it put this movie behind the eight ball. Don't think it'll ever make $1. Absolutely insane. There's also a link in the video description.